viewers will see that we put up a logo for Vela Sailing Supply at the beginning of this episode, and I just wanted to do that as a big shout out and thank you to Vela, because they've done such a great job over the last couple of years of keeping us supplied with parts. We don't have a financial relationship with them. This isn't sponsored content. It's simply something that we'd like to thank them for all the hard work they do in keeping us supplied with parts when we're out on the far corners of the earth. They have been great. Their prices are good, and Rod and his family do just a really, really fantastic job. Here you have the workers working at their usual pace. These guys are probably on hourly wage, and that means that they sit around. They don't do work. So it's kind of you never want to be on hourly time and materials on something. The only thing I ever pay time and materials on is electrical work, and usually I'm around. When you have an electrical problem that you can't fix on a boat, you're going to have to hire an electrician, and of course they're only as good as the individual person. But those guys are going to have to diagnose it. That's why knowing as much as possible about the problem to be able to describe it is a big part of getting electrical work done quickly. And also it's worth watching, because you can find out how they fixed it, and if the problem recurs, you might be able to fix it yourself. I've been meaning to do a video for a while on my experiences with not getting ripped off, and I have to admit that I have been ripped off in the boatyards before, and with marine services, tradespeople before. So I wanted to kind of give my feelings about it. My background is in project management, construction project management, so this is very, very closely aligned with hiring subcontractors in construction and managing them, trying to get the job done on schedule, at about the right price, so very close to the price you agreed on, and having the quality be good, and that's a very tough thing to do. A lot of times the viewers want to know about costs of cruising, and I think the real source of the problem what everybody wants to know is how to do it cheaply and inexpensively, and unfortunately that just doesn't happen. It's just not easy and cheap. If you want to go cheap, get a van or an RV. Those are easily fixable. You just fill them up with gas and go, and everything's pretty much okay. With boats, it's different. The parts are just impossible to find. They're so expensive. And it's demoralizing when you think about it, but it is the deal. And so if you're a cruiser, these are my thoughts. The first thing first thing you do is you try to do everything that you can yourself. But there are going to be things like replacing an engine, or replacing a genset, or pulling your mast, or doing major electronics work that you just aren't going to be able to do yourself. And you've determined that, and now it's time to find somebody to do the work for you. What do you do? My feeling is there's a couple of things. You're going to need to find the right person, and you're going to need to have a scope of work, or RFP. An RFP is usually a formal request for proposal. You write that out. And within that request for proposal is going to be a scope of work. The scope of work is going to state exactly what it is that you want and what the expectations are. The expectations, this can be by email, this can be by message, WhatsApp, whatever, but it has to be in writing. It needs to be conveyed to the tradesperson, so that you can point back to it later on. Same thing goes for any agreements on prices, any changes of the scope of work, any changes that you've agreed to as far as change orders would go. So you've added something to the scope of work. You can't just ever tell these guys, go ahead and do that, even if it seems like it's a small thing, because the next thing you know, it comes back with an insane price associated with it, and the guy's already done the work. And that's the game. They know it, and if you're smart, you'll know it too. I would suggest writing out the scope of work. If it's a big enough job to warrant all of this, then go ahead and write it out on a piece of paper, type it up, whatever. You don't have to get crazy about it. The tradespeople get a little bit leery when you start sending them big legal type paperwork. They don't like that. They prefer to work kind of like loosey-goosey within some agreement, but they don't really like seeing things that say that, you know, there'll be liquidated damages or you know, that the people have to carry insurance or any of this sort of stuff. They, especially in the islands, they shy away from that, and it will necessarily raise the price. They'll raise the price to price themselves out of the work, hoping that you just won't take it and go with somebody else instead. As far as finding the right people go, I have discovered that almost every location in the world that has a significant cruising community will have a local Facebook page. That's, you know, for here it's the Antigua Cruisers, there's the St. Martin's Cruisers. These are private Facebook pages, so you have to apply you have to, you know, ask to join, and then they'll probably have some questions for you. The kind of pre-populated questions will pop up and say, what's your boat, where are you, when do you expect to be here? And they're trying to weed out the armchair cruiser forum type people that you see a lot online. They don't want those people because they're not actually here, and they're oftentimes they don't really sail, and they just kind of live vicariously through the videos, but they don't know very much really. But once you get onto one of these cruiser Facebook pages, just put the question out there, you know, who does good work with Yanmar engines, who does good work with Fisher Panda or Yamaha outboards or something like this, and they will immediately give you like a wealth of information. 2 or 3 people, I got, you know, asked for a machinist the other day, and I got really, really good, you know, insightful responses from the local cruisers saying, I like this guy's great, but he's super expensive. This other guy is great as well, but he takes a long time. You know, this other guy is you know, really inept, and you don't want to deal with him. And so that was great because you never would have known, you know, absent, you know, somebody else's experience. So once you've figured that part out, and then you have to go talk to the people, approach them. Hopefully face to face is a good way to do it, and say, I've got this job that I need done, and I was wanting to just see if you're interested in it. That's how I always frame it to them. Is this something you'd be interested in doing? If you come to them and start begging right away for help, they you know, they really think they have you. So at that point, you say, you know, you've talked about the job. You say, I've got this, you know, machined part that I need recreated, and now we need to get it made. When that happens, that's when it's time to send them an email saying, so we talked today, following up on that discussion. Here's what I'm looking to get done, the time frame that I need it done in, and I need a price. And that's the main thing, is to get a price out of them, an estimate of what they think it's going to be. If they really start balking at doing an estimate, if they want to do time and materials or something, you have to start being very careful. If you're not around to supervise it directly, I would never do time and materials, especially for things like gel coat or paint or anything like this, because it's an open-ended job at that point. I get asked a lot, is it okay to prepay for things? And I would say it depends on what it is. If the tradesperson is working typically for a boss someplace, and you're kind of approaching him directly as a side job, he's probably not going to have accounts at the store and things like that. And also here in the islands in the Caribbean, a lot of times if you're a yacht in transit, they call it, if you're not a resident or citizen of the island, you don't pay import duties or taxes. And so things like paint and bottom paint and things like this are cheaper for the boat owner to buy. And so you're best off to agree on what they're going to need and go and buy it yourself and deliver it. But as far as paying them to go get it, I wouldn't do that, especially not in advance. There's too much of a chance that they're just going to disappear and stop returning your calls. And if that happens, then you don't have a whole lot of recourse. What are you going to do? Tell the police that you gave somebody $800 and they said, no, you didn't? It's not going to work. So I would say be leery about paying in advance for anything. And if they're really pushing you to pay for something in advance, then just go to somebody else. They may have fixed costs. If that's the case, then work with them on it. But I would make those payments as a third party myself. Let's see, supervision. Supervision's a big one. If you're a cruiser, you've been in the boatyards before or in the marinas, and you see a retail space and it says marine services on it, provisioning, engineering, all this different stuff, immigration, customs services. And what these companies do is they're basically the general contractors of the area. They've got a big Rolodex of people. They don't do the work themselves. So they'll get you, if you go in there and say, I want a new VHF antenna installed on my boat, they'll arrange to have a rigger come and go up on the mast in a bosun's chair with your new antenna and put it on and all this sort of stuff, and maybe have an engineer come, an electrical engineer come and take a look at it, make sure the radio actually works afterward, that sort of a thing. So they're kind of a one-stop shop, but they're going to be expensive. They're basically going to take 20% or 25% or more out of whatever they're paying the guy, or at least add it on. So that's like an expensive way to go, but they're going to be the ones doing the supervising. And to be honest, if I was to use someone like that, I would go and ask them very specifically, like, what exactly is your role as a supervisor? Do you guarantee their work? What happens if the work is crappy and not what we talked about? And see what they say, because I think a lot of times they probably say, well, I don't know what to tell you, it's just like, but this again speaks to the dangers of trying to do any kind of work remotely. I've got a person that we deal with that's looking at having some davits put on, and he's having the davits shipped to Greece because of COVID. He can't travel, and he's having the local people at the yard install these davits, and I'm scared to death for him because I think that there's so many opportunities for it to be done wrong. And if you're not there, they just tell you afterwards, oh, I didn't realize, your dinghy had lifting eyes, and the davits had to be the same width as those lifting eyes. Sorry about that. They're just strong, and there's no moving it because it's such a brutal invasion of the boat. You've drilled giant holes and all sorts of things. So I personally almost never do outside work where I'm not standing there looking over the guy's shoulder. Otherwise, damage happens to the boat, interior damage. If you have when we had our heat exchangers and everything pulled out of our engine when we got to St. Lucia, I was there and I was just watching, big heavy parts get set on the salon sole, right on the wood, and I had to be there to tell him, Glenn, don't do that. You need cardboard or something under it. You can't just scratch the wood like that. So even as it was, we ended up with scratches and stuff. And we loved the guy, and he was great, but he was in a hurry and needing to get the job done. And so he didn't have the time to be neat and clean about it. So I think that really the main two things that are left are going to be final payments and what happens if you're not happy with the work. There's a lot of, I would never pay the final payment. There might be progress payments involved. They might say that as soon as the engine block is in or the old engine's out, there's a 1/3 payment, and then there's another payment when the engine is in, and then a final payment when the engine's up and running in the water. That final payment, you have got to be, you can't get excited. You might really like the guy. You can't get all excited and go and just immediately pay him. You have to actually test the product and make sure that it's working properly. Once you've made that final payment, they have no incentive to come and do any kind of after install service. They just, or any type of warranty repair. They're kind of like, at that point, you're depending totally on them being good people. And in this line of work, you can't do that. They're just not always good people. They're not always people of their word. And that's something that drives me crazy as well, because when I shake hands with somebody on something, I really expect that they're going to do it. And that really takes us to what you're going to do if you're not happy with the work. There's a lot of danger for people getting work done in marinas and in foreign countries, because going to court and getting lawyers involved and all that sort of stuff is just an absolute last resort, and you may not even have access to it as a foreigner. And you, at the very minimum, they're going to kind of favor the local tradespeople over you anyway. They just figure you're some rich, American guy, and they're gonna not be real sympathetic to your situation. So you have to make sure that the deal goes well, and be ready to basically just say, I'm done, I'm out, I'm quit. You're fired, whatever. Let's close it out now. What do you need to be paid? For the work that you've done so far, because if it comes down to a point where you owe a lot of money, or somebody says that you owe a lot of money, and they tell the marina that you owe a lot of money, and they want the marina to not launch your boat, the marina largely won't do it until you guys have figured this out. The same thing goes with customs in Greece. You have to have a letter from the marina saying that all your bills are paid before you can clear out of Greece. So you have to be very careful about making sure that you're on good terms with these people. It's so important not to come off as heavy-handed or mean or aggressive, and that's a big mistake I see a lot of people do. I think culturally some other non-Americans out there, I don't want to make any sweeping generalizations, but there are people out there that tend to treat the tradespeople as kind of servants and butlers, and they're very, very dismissive of them, and the people just, they don't really need that in their lives. They just don't. The beauty of being a subcontractor is that you can tell any one of your customers to go screw themselves. As long as you've got 15 others, everything's all fine. And they live a very, very they're freedom-loving people when it comes to that sort of stuff. And if you can get on their good side, they're the most wonderful people in the world. But boy, if you turn them against them, then all of a sudden all bets are off. And they just say, screw it, well, I don't care about you at all anymore. You don't get anything. And not only that, I'll tell the rest of the people around the yard that you're this way also, so there's going to be nobody else to go to. It's a complicated world out there. I try my best to keep as light a footprint as I possibly can, be as friendly and nice. I try to buy lunch for the guys if they have a whole day where they don't get lunch. We always provide water, a bottled water out of the refrigerator. We don't ever really give them alcohol, unless it's at the very, very end. We might have a beer, under the, in the shade of the boat or something in the boatyard. But other than that, we try to make ourselves easy to get along with. We lend tools. I lend tools to these guys all the time because they'll show up for a really complicated job with a very, very minimal toolkit, surprisingly, and they just don't have the specialty tools. So we have that. But again, you better be around to supervise to make sure you get it back. Once they found out where my toolkit is and know what's there, they just start digging in and rooting around on their own, and I don't like it when that happens. And I usually say something like, look, if you need a tool, ask me, I'll get it for you, or I just put my tools in a place where they're inaccessible and force them to ask me. So we do it that way. But just as an aside, it's not really a thing about dissatisfaction with work, but another area that people can get themselves in trouble in is if you buy a boat that's been sitting in a boatyard for a long time and you close on the boat and everything, and you think everything's all good, and then you go to launch and the marina says, there's like 5 years of payments, back payments for marine, for marina fees here. And that you say, what? That's the old owner. And they said, nuh-uh, it's the boat. We're not letting you take the boat out of here until you pay this. If you don't have that, if you're not forward thinking about money and what could possibly happen, then you're going to have some problems. You just got to be really on your toes about it. I hate to say it, but I think that a lot of the people in this world of marine services, they're kind of used to taking advantage of people. I don't want to, again, it's a broad stroke, but you have to kind of, you got to use your spider sense a little bit about what type of person this is, and if they've done this before, where they've said, oh yeah, I can put that in for you, and then you find out it's not the part you thought that it was, and you weren't specific about it. You didn't have that in your scope of work. That it was a quantum radar, Raymarine quantum 24-mile radar, or a quantum 2. and then you find out that they just sold you a quantum original, like first generation quantum radar that they had sitting around in the back and charged you full price for it. And then they said, no, that's what we discussed. That's exactly what we discussed. And these are the types of things, just a miscommunication. You gotta make sure you don't have that. And I think that's pretty much covers it. Call me or ask for stuff in the comments. You maybe make a comment if you want, if you have a question, or if you've got an addition to this whole thing, just add it into the comments. I think people are going to be reading the comments on this particular video. It's just a short, quick video, not a very long one. So anyway, we'll talk soon. Everything's good.